The Galactic Academy of Interstellar Relations was the biggest school in the known universe. Students came from over 300 different planets to study here. They learned about trade, diplomacy, science, and how to work with species different from their own. The academy floated in space, a massive station with halls that stretched for miles and rooms designed to fit beings of every size and shape. Among all these alien students, there was one human girl named. Was 22 years old. She had come from Earth 6 months ago. Earth was a planet that the galactic government had recently discovered and classified as a Category 7. This was the highest danger rating any planet could receive. When other species learned about Earth, they could not believe that anything could survive there. On Earth, the weather tried to kill you. Storms dropped lightning from the sky. Water fell as rain that could flood entire cities. The ground shook without warning and swallowed buildings whole. Fire spread across forests and burned everything in its path. Snow and ice covered half the planet for months at a time, freezing anything that could not find shelter. The animals on Earth were even worse. Giant predators with claws and teeth hunted in packs. Tiny creatures carried poisons that could stop a heart in seconds. The oceans were filled with monsters that could swallow ships. Even the plants were dangerous. Some had thorns that could pierce skin. Others produced poisons that caused death with a single touch. And somehow, humans had not only survived on this nightmare world. They had become the dominant species. They had conquered every environment, killed every predator that threatened them, and built cities that covered the planet. When the galactic community first made contact with Earth, they sent their best scientists to study how this was possible. The reports they sent back were disturbing. Humans could run for hours without stopping, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could heal from wounds that would kill most other species. They ate plants and animals that were poisonous to nearly every other known life form. They drank a liquid called coffee that would cause heart failure in most aliens. But the most disturbing thing about humans was their history. They had spent most of their existence at war with each other. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had killed billions of their own kind in conflicts over land, resources, and ideas. Violence was woven into their very nature. So when arrived at the Galactic Academy, the other students did not know what to make of her. She was small for a human. She stood about average height with a slim build that did not look particularly threatening. Her black hair was always tied back in a simple style. Her face was round and soft, with dark eyes that seemed calm and peaceful. She wore the same academy uniform as everyone else and carried a worn notebook wherever she went. She did not look like a monster from a... But there was something about her that made the other students uncomfortable. It took them a while to figure out what it was. Was too still. Most species moved constantly. They shifted their weight, twitched their limbs, adjusted their positions. It was natural. It was normal, but could sit perfectly motionless for hours at a time. Her breathing was so slow and controlled that sometimes other students thought she had stopped breathing entirely. Her eyes tracked movement with a precision that felt wrong, like she was always watching, always calculating. She never flinched at sudden noises. When a door slammed or someone dropped something heavy, other students would jump or cry out in surprise, would simply turn her head slowly toward the sound, assess it, and return to whatever she had been doing. Nothing startled her. Nothing seemed to affect her at all. In the 6 months since her arrival, had made no friends. She did not join any social groups or attend any parties. She arrived early to every lecture, always chose a seat in the back corner, and left as soon as class ended. She spoke only when instructors called on her directly, and her answers were always brief and correct. The other students whispered about her. They called her the quiet one, the still one, They made up stories about what she might have done on Earth, what horrors she might have witnessed or committed. Some said she was a soldier. Others said she was a killer. A few said she was simply broken, traumatized by life on a world of constant danger. None of them ever asked her directly. None of them wanted to get that close. There was one instructor who found particularly interesting. His name was, and he was a tall being from a planet called. He taught xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. Humans were his subject of research and was the only human at the academy. Often used as an example in his lectures, he would project her medical scans on the large screen at the front of the classroom and point out the features that made humans so unusual. "Observe the bone density," he would say in his clicking, buzzing voice. "Human bones are 3 times denser than the galactic average. They can absorb impacts that would shatter the skeletons of most species. Notice also the muscle attachment points. Human muscles are anchored more securely than any other known bipedal species. This gives them extraordinary strength for their size." He would zoom in on different parts of her anatomy, explaining each feature like she was a specimen in a museum. The human cardiovascular system includes redundant pathways. If one blood vessel is damaged, others can compensate. Their immune system is aggressive beyond anything we have previously documented. It attacks foreign organisms with chemical weapons and can adapt to new threats within days. And perhaps most remarkably, humans can continue functioning even when severely injured. They can ignore pain that would incapacitate other beings and keep fighting until their bodies literally fail. During these lectures, would sit in her usual corner seat and take notes in her worn notebook. Her expression never changed as described her like she was some kind of biological weapon. She did not seem embarrassed or proud or angry. She simply wrote down the information as if it was about someone else entirely. Her classmates would stare at her during these moments, trying to see the monster that was describing. But all they saw was a quiet young woman with a calm face and still hands. The academy administration considered a model student. She had perfect attendance, excellent grades, and had never caused any problems. She followed all the rules and never drew attention to herself. They thought she was harmless. They thought she was passive. They did not understand that was not being passive. She was being patient. There was a difference. On Earth, the most dangerous predators were often the ones that waited. They would sit motionless for hours, watching their prey, learning its patterns, choosing the perfect moment to strike. They did not waste energy on unnecessary movement or pointless displays of aggression. They conserved their strength until it was needed. Had learned this lesson early in her life. She had learned that stillness was not weakness, silence was not submission, and patience was the deadliest weapon of all. She sat in her corner seat, took her notes, and waited. She did not know what she was waiting for yet, but she knew that something would come eventually. Something always did. The universe was full of beings who mistook quiet for fear and stillness for surrender. When they came for her, she would be ready, was the kind of person who had never been told no. He came from a wealthy family on a planet called Prime. His father owned trading ships that moved goods across half the galaxy. His mother sat on councils that decided the fates of entire worlds. From the day he was born, had been given everything he wanted. He was massive by any standard. The species looked like what humans might call rhinoceroses, if rhinoceroses walked on 2 legs and wore expensive clothes. Stood over 2 meters tall and weighed more than 300 kilograms. His skin was thick and tough enough to stop most blades. His hands were the size of dinner plates, with fingers strong enough to crush metal. Prime was classified as a Category 2 world. The climate was mild, the resources were abundant, and there were almost no natural predators. They had evolved without any real threats to their survival. They had never needed to fight for their lives, never needed to develop the survival instincts that other species possessed. But they had learned to enjoy fighting anyway. When you grew up with everything you wanted, you eventually started wanting things you should not have. Power over others, fear in their eyes, the feeling of being stronger than everyone around you. Had 2 friends who followed him everywhere. The first was from a desert world. There were reptilian, with scales that shifted colors based on their emotions, was smaller than and much more nervous. His scales were often yellow with fear or green with discomfort. He followed because it was safer than standing against him. The second was another, was almost as big as but not nearly as clever. He did whatever told him to do without asking questions. He liked the simple parts of their arrangement, the part where he got to push people around and take their things. Together, the three of them had claimed the academy as their territory. They walked through the halls like they owned the place, and in a way, they did. His family donated large amounts of money to the academy every year. The administrators knew better than to punish him for anything. For the past 2 years had been tormenting the other students. He took their credits, their food, their belongings. He broke their things when he was bored. He hurt them when he was angry. And no one did anything to stop him because no one could. The victims never reported what happened. They knew it would only make things worse. His family would protect him, and he would punish anyone who spoke against him. It was easier to just give him what he wanted and hope he moved on to someone else. But always got bored with his toys eventually. He always needed new victims, new challenges, new ways to prove his dominance. That was why he had started watching The Human Girl. Had caught his attention from her first day at the academy. She was different from the other students. She walked differently, moved differently, acted differently. Most students hurried through the halls with their heads down, trying to avoid notice. Walked slowly and steadily, her eyes forward, her posture relaxed. She did not hurry for anyone. At first, thought she simply did not know who he was. New students sometimes took a while to learn the social hierarchy of the academy. They would act brave until they understood how things worked, and then they would fall in line like everyone else. But weeks passed and did not fall in line. She did not avoid his gaze when he stared at her. She did not change her route when she saw him coming. She did not react when he made comments loud enough for her to hear. She simply continued whatever she was doing as if he did not exist. This made angry in a way he did not fully understand. He was used to fear. He was used to submission. He was used to being the biggest, the strongest, the most important person in any room. His complete indifference made him feel small in a way that nothing else ever had. He started watching her more closely, looking for weaknesses. He learned her schedule, her habits, her routines. She always sat in the same seat in every classroom. She always ate alone in the same corner of the cafeteria. She always walked the same paths through the station. She was predictable in her patterns but impossible to read in her reactions. Did not like this obsession. He had heard stories about humans, about their and their violent history. He had seen the educational videos that showed humans hunting in packs, running prey to exhaustion, fighting with weapons and teeth and bare hands. The humans in those videos had smiled while they killed. They had laughed at pain that would have left other species screaming. "Maybe we should leave the human alone," suggested one day. "She has not bothered anyone. She keeps to herself." Laughed at this. "Are you afraid of her? She is tiny, she is alone, she has no one to protect her." "But she is from her species is dangerous." "Her species is dangerous," agreed. "But she is not her species. She is just one small female who sits in corners and writes in notebooks. What is she going to do to me?" Did not have an answer for this. He wanted to say that maybe the quiet ones were the most dangerous, that maybe there was a reason she sat so still and watched everything so carefully. But he knew would not listen, never listened to warnings. Had no concerns at all. He was already thinking about what they would take from the human. Humans were new to the galactic community, so she probably had interesting things. Strange technology from her, unusual food, credits from Earth that might be valuable to collectors. "When do we approach her?" asked. Had been waiting for the right moment. He wanted an audience. He wanted everyone to see him dominate the student from the planet that everyone feared. If he could make her submit, it would send a message to the entire academy. No one would ever challenge him again. Tomorrow, he decided, in the common study hall, plenty of witnesses. That night could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human girl's eyes. They were dark and calm and completely empty of fear. He had seen those eyes in the hunting videos, on the faces of humans as they chased their prey across endless plains. He told himself he was being foolish, was right. She was just one small female. What could she possibly do? But somewhere deep in his reptilian brain, an ancient instinct was screaming at him. It was the instinct that had kept his ancestors alive on their harsh desert world. It was the instinct that told prey animals when a predator was near. And it was telling him that something terrible was about to happen. The next morning followed into the common study hall. He watched as approached the human girl's table. He saw her sitting there with her, perfectly still, perfectly calm. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that they had made a horrible mistake. The common study hall was a large open space on the third level of the academy. Long tables filled the room in neat rows, with chairs designed to fit species of many different sizes and shapes. Large windows looked out into the endless black of space, and soft lighting made the room feel warm and comfortable. On this particular morning, the hall was about half full. Students from a dozen different worlds sat scattered around the room, reading, working on assignments, or talking quietly with friends. It was a normal day, nothing special, nothing unusual. Sat at her usual table in the far corner. The table was small, designed for only one or two occupants. She had chosen this spot specifically because it put a wall at her back and gave her a clear view of both entrances to the hall. This was not paranoia. This was simply habit. On Earth, you learn to always know your exits. She was reading an article about atmospheric chemistry on her. It was research for a project due next week. The topic was not particularly interesting to her, but she was thorough about her studies. Good grades meant she could stay at the academy. Staying at the academy meant she could build a better future for herself. She noticed when the three students entered the hall. She had been aware of them for weeks now. The large one had been watching her with increasing intensity. She had observed him enough to understand what he was, a predator of the social kind, someone who fed on the fear of others to feel powerful. On Earth, there were animals like this. Hyenas, for example. They hunted in packs and targeted the weak and isolated. They were not particularly brave or skilled. They simply had numbers and aggression on their side. Most of the time, that was enough. Continued reading as the three approached. She did not look up. She did not tense. She simply tracked their reflections in the surface of her and waited. Stopped at her table. He placed both of his massive hands on the surface and leaned down. He was trying to invade her space, to loom over her, to make her feel small and trapped. It was a dominance display. Had seen similar behavior in countless species, both on Earth and here at the Academy. "Human," he said. She turned a page on her. "I am talking to you." The word was meant as an insult. To most galactic species, being from a was shameful, a sign of primitive origins. They did not understand that humans wore the label with pride. They had survived the unsurvivable. They had conquered the unconquerable. Their planet had tried to kill them for millions of years, and they were still here. Looked up slowly. She met's eyes and held his gaze. Her expression was neutral, almost bored. She had learned long ago not to show emotion to bullies. Emotion was what they wanted. Fear, anger, despair, these were the reactions that fed them. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and calm. Several nearby students had stopped pretending to work. They were watching now, their bodies tense with second-hand fear. They knew what was coming. They had seen it before. Leaned closer. His breath smelled like something chemical and wrong, the food of his species processed through an alien digestive system. His small eyes glinted with anticipation. "I have decided something," he said. "From now on, you are going to do all my coursework for the rest of the term. You will write my papers, complete my assignments, and take my examinations. You will also give me half of your meal credits every cycle. This is not a request." The silence in the study hall was complete. Every student within hearing distance had frozen. They looked at with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity because they knew what would do to her. Relief because at least it was not happening to them. Held's gaze for a long moment. She seemed to be considering his words carefully, as if they were a business proposal rather than a threat. Then she looked back at her. "No," she said. The word hung in the air like a physical thing, made a small sound of distress. His mouth fell open, stood very still, his brain struggling to process what he had just heard. No one said no to. It simply did not happen. The social order of the academy was built on the understanding that was at the top, and everyone else existed to serve his wants. This small human female had just broken that understanding with a single syllable. "What did you say?" His voice had dropped to a low rumble. It was the sound he made before violence. Did not look up from her reading. "I said no. I am busy with my own work. I do not have time to do yours. Please leave." The nearby students began quietly gathering their belongings. They recognized the signs. This was about to become ugly, and no one wanted to be close when it happened. They slipped away one by one, trying not to draw attention to themselves. His hand shot out and slapped the from's grasp. It flew across the room and hit the floor with a loud crack. The screen shattered, sending tiny pieces of glass scattering across the polished surface. The action was meant to shock her, to trigger a fear response, to break through her wall of calm. It was what always did when words failed him. He moved to violence quickly and without warning. Watched her fall. She looked at the broken screen, the scattered glass, the ruined device that she had saved for months to afford. Then she looked back at. Her expression had not changed. Her breathing had not quickened. Her hands remained still on her thighs. "That was Academy property," she said. Her voice was exactly as calm as before. "You will have to pay for the replacement." Laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound, more like a bark than actual amusement. "I will pay for nothing. I do not pay for anything. Other people pay me." He reached down and grabbed the front of her uniform. The fabric bunched in his massive fist as he lifted her half out of her chair. Her feet barely touched the ground. She hung in his grip like a doll, small and light and helpless. "You think because you come from you are special," he growled. "You think you are tough. You are nothing. You are just another weak little creature who walked into the wrong territory." Did not struggle. She did not try to break free. She simply hung there looking at him with those calm, dark eyes. "Let go of me," she said. "This is your warning." Felt something cold run down his spine. He had been watching the human carefully, waiting for the fear to appear in her eyes. But there was no fear. There was only stillness. The same stillness he had seen in hunting videos, in the moments before human predators struck. "Please," he said let her go, "something is wrong." But was not listening. He was too focused on his display of dominance, too caught up in the moment of power. He shook like she weighed nothing at all. "Warning," he laughed. "You are warning me. Do you know who my family is? Do you know what I could do to you?" His head tilted slightly. It was a small movement, almost impossible to notice, but saw it, and something ancient in his brain screamed in recognition. "I know exactly what you could do," she said. "You could hurt me. You could have me expelled. You could make my life here very difficult. Then why are you not afraid?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, not louder, not more aggressive, but different in a way that made one to run. "Because you do not understand what you are holding," threw back into her chair. The force of it sent the chair sliding several inches across the floor. The metal legs scraped against the surface with a harsh sound that echoed through the silent study hall. Absorbed the impact without making a sound. Her body moved with the momentum, bending and then straightening like a tree in the wind. When the chair stopped, she was sitting exactly as she had been before. Hands on her thighs, back straight, eyes forward, perfectly still. She did not rub the spot where his fist had gripped her uniform. She did not adjust her clothing or fix her hair. She did not show any sign that she had been touched at all. Stood over her, breathing heavily. The throw had used more of his strength than he had intended. Something about her stillness made him want to hurt her, to break through that wall of calm and see what was underneath. "Pathetic," he sneered. "All that talk about humans and you are just another scared little prey animal. You cannot even fight back. You just sit there like a statue." The remaining students in the hall were pressed against the far walls, trying to make themselves invisible. Most of them had stopped breathing. They knew they were watching something dangerous, but they could not look away. Leaned toward and spoke in a low voice. "Maybe we should go. The human is acting strange." Strange did not take his eyes off. "She is terrified. Look at her. She cannot even move. I have broken her spirit completely." But was not so sure. He had been studying xenobiology all term. He had read the reports about human survival mechanisms, the biological responses that activated when they faced danger. The galactic science community had identified three main responses: fight, flight, and freeze. Fight was obvious. Humans became aggressive, violent, dangerous. Their bodies flooded with chemicals that made them faster and stronger. They attacked whatever threatened them with terrifying efficiency. Flight was also familiar. Humans ran when they could not win, but even their running was dangerous. They could maintain their pace for hours, outlasting any pursuer. Other species might be faster in short bursts, but humans would keep coming until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. But the third response, freeze, was the one that scared researchers the most. Most species froze because they were prey animals hopping to be overlooked. They became still because stillness might save them from being noticed. It was a passive response, a last desperate attempt to avoid confrontation. Human freeze was different. Human freeze was the stillness of a predator picking its moment. It was the calm before extreme violence. It was the pause while the brain calculated angles, distances, weak points, and killing strikes. Human freeze was not surrender. Human freeze was preparation. Watched sitting in her chair. He noticed how her weight was perfectly balanced. He saw how her hands rested on her thighs in a way that would let her move them quickly in any direction. He observed the slight tension in her shoulders that suggested coiled power waiting to be released. This was not fear paralysis. This was something else entirely. He said, his voice shaking, "We need to leave right now, please." Shoved him away without looking. "Do not be a coward. I am not done with this one yet. She needs to learn her place." He turned back to, reaching for her again. His hand was open, ready to grab her by the hair or the throat. He would show her what happened to people who said no to him. He would make an example of her that the whole academy would remember. Moved. The motion was so fast that barely saw it. One moment's hand was reaching for her. The next moment, she had caught his wrist in her grip and pulled him down. She did not stand up. She did not shift her position. She simply reached out and grabbed him and suddenly was not in control anymore. The pull used its own momentum against him. He had been leaning forward, reaching down, and redirected that energy with a simple twist of her body. His face slammed into the table beside her with a sound like a hammer hitting stone. The surface cracked under the impact. Before could react, his other hand was on the back of his head. Her fingers tangled in the short fur that covered his skull. She held him pinned to the broken table, his arms trapped at awkward angles, his legs scrambling for purchase on the smooth floor. She still had not stood up. Took a step forward, his hands clenching into fists. Then he stopped. Something in his eyes made him freeze. It was not anger, it was not fear. It was something cold and calculating, like she was looking at a problem to be solved rather than a threat to be faced. "Stay where you are," she said. Her voice was still calm, still quiet, still perfectly controlled. "This does not concern you unless you want it to." Stayed where he was. Struggled against grip. He was 3 times her size, 5 times her weight. He was the strongest student in the academy, feared by everyone, challenged by no one, and he could not move. Human grip strength, the xenobiology report said, was extraordinary. Humans could hold on to prey with enough force to crush bone. They could hang from branches for hours, climb cliffs with their bare hands, strangle predators larger than themselves. Their hands had evolved as weapons as much as tools. His hand on his wrist had twisted his arm at an angle that sent shooting pain through his shoulder. Her fingers were like steel cables, locked in place and utterly immovable. Her other hand held his head down with a pressure that seemed impossible for her small frame. "I tried to warn you," she said. She might have been discussing the weather or the chemical composition of atmospheres. There was no emotion in her voice at all. "I told you to let go. I told you to leave. You had a choice." "You cannot do this," gasped. Panic was starting to creep into his voice. "My family will destroy you. They will have you expelled. They will have you arrested. They will." "Your family is not here," leaned closer. Her face was inches from his, and he could finally see her eyes clearly. They were dark and deep and absolutely empty of mercy. "Right now, there is just you and me, and you have made a serious mistake." Wanted to run. Every instinct in his body was screaming at him to flee, to get as far away from this human as possible. But his legs would not obey him. He was frozen in place, trapped by an ancient prey response that recognized when a predator was present. The few remaining students in the hall were the same. They stood motionless against the walls, their eyes wide, their bodies rigid. They were watching something that they would remember for the rest of their lives. Held pinned for a long moment. The study hall was completely silent except for his labored breathing and the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. "Do you know why humans do not start fights?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "It is not because we are peaceful. It is not because we are afraid of conflict." She paused and felt something cold settle in his stomach. "It is because we know how fights end." Study hall had become a frozen moment in time. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sounds were the distant hum of the station and its ragged breathing as he struggled uselessly against grip. Held him pinned to the cracked table, one hand on his wrist, one hand on the back of his head. She had not stood up from her chair. She had barely moved at all, and yet she had complete control over a being 3 times her size. "You called my planet she said. Her voice was quiet but clear, carrying through the silent room. "You are right. That is exactly what Earth is. Everything there wants to kill us. The weather tries to freeze us, burn us, drown us, and tear us apart. The animals hunt us with claws and teeth and poison. The plants have thorns that pierce skin and toxins that stop hearts. Even the tiny creatures, too small to see, can destroy us from the inside." She adjusted her grip slightly and whimpered. The sound was strange coming from someone so large, so powerful, so used to being feared. "We spent millions of years learning to survive in that place," continued. "We had no choice. We were not the fastest animals. We were not the strongest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were soft and slow and vulnerable. By every measure, we should have gone extinct." Was shaking. His scales had turned a pale yellow, the color of pure terror. He wanted to help, but he could not make himself move. Some ancient part of his brain had recognized what was, and it refused to let him interfere. "But we did not go extinct," said. "We survived, we adapted, we learned. And then we did something that no other species on our planet had ever done. We stopped surviving and started winning." She released his wrist. For a moment he thought it was over. He thought she was letting him go. His arm dropped to his side, numb from her grip. Then both of her hands moved to his head. One hand was on his forehead. The other was under his chin. She held him gently, almost tenderly, like a mother holding a child. Every species that tried to prey on us. Her voice was still calm, still quiet. Extinct. We hunted them down and killed them all. Every disease that tried to wipe us out. We cured it or we burned through it and kept going. Every natural disaster that tried to destroy us. We endured it and rebuilt. We are the apex predator of a world that produces apex predators. Finally found his voice. Please, he said, please, we did not mean, please just let him go. Did not look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the back of his head, her hands still in position. I gave him a warning, she said. I gave him a choice. He could have walked away, he could have left me alone. Instead, he grabbed me. He threatened me. He broke my property and tried to make me his slave. She leaned closer to his ear. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper, but somehow everyone in the room could hear it clearly. On Earth we have a saying, do not start fights you cannot finish. You started this fight, you decided how this would go, you made your choice. Was crying now. Tears ran down his face and pooled on the cracked table beneath him. He had never been so afraid in his life. He had never felt so helpless, so powerless, so completely at the mercy of another being. Please, he begged. I am sorry, I will leave you alone. I will never bother you again. I will pay for I will do anything. Just please let me go. Was quiet for a long moment. The seconds stretched into eternity. Every student in the hall waited to see what would happen next. I believe you, she said finally. I believe you would leave me alone after this. I believe you would never bother me again. Hope flickered in his eyes. Maybe she would show mercy. Maybe she would let this end without more violence. But it is not just about me, said. It is about all the others, all the students you have hurt over the years, all the ones you broke and tormented and stole from, all the ones who were too afraid to fight back because they knew no one would help them. Her grip on his head tightened slightly. If I let you go now, you will learn nothing. You will wait until the fear fades and then you will find new victims. You will keep hurting people because that is what you are. That is what you have always been. Was sobbing openly now. No, I swear I will change. I will be different. Please, please, you do not have to do this. You are right, said. I do not have to do this. I am choosing to do this. There is a difference. She twisted her hands in a single sharp motion. The sound was loud in the silent room. It was the sound of something breaking, something final, something that could not be undone. His body went limp instantly. His eyes stayed open, but there was nothing behind them anymore. Released his head and let his body slide off the table. It crumpled to the floor in a heap of flesh and expensive clothing. He did not move. He would never move again. For a long moment, no one did anything. The students stood frozen against the walls, unable to process what they had just witnessed, made a gagging sound and turned away, his body convulsing, stared its body with an expression of pure shock. Remained seated in her chair. She looked down at the body for a moment, her face showing no emotion at all. Then she reached past it and picked up her broken from the floor. She tried to turn it on, but the screen was too damaged. She set it on the table with a small sigh. I am sorry you had to see that, she said to the room. Her voice was the same as it had always been, quiet, calm, polite. Could someone please call security? I will need to file a self-defense report. No one moved. No one could move. They were still trying to understand what had happened, still trying to reconcile the small, quiet girl with what she had just done. Waited patiently. After a moment she turned to, who was still shaking and pale. You, she said gently. Are you able to call security? I would do it myself, but my is broken. Nodded slowly. His hands trembled as he activated his own device and made the call. His voice shook as he reported the incident, but he managed to get the words out. Security arrived within minutes. They found still sitting in her chair, surrounded by broken table, scattered glass, and one very dead student. She cooperated fully with their investigation. She answered every question calmly and honestly. She did not seem upset or frightened or remorseful. The Academy reviewed the footage from the study hall's cameras. They saw approach unprovoked. They saw him grab her, lift her, threaten her. They saw her issue 2 clear warnings before the confrontation escalated. They saw her remain seated throughout the entire encounter. The official ruling was justified self-defense, had been assaulted by a larger, stronger attacker. She had warned him twice to stop. She had used the minimum force necessary to end the threat. The fact that she had killed him without standing up from her chair was noted but not held against her. His family threatened to sue, to have arrested, to have her deported back to Earth. But the evidence was clear, and the galactic courts did not favor wealthy bullies who got themselves killed through their own stupidity. Within days, the story had spread across the entire Academy. Within weeks, it had reached other stations and other worlds. Within months, it had become a legend. The human girl who sat quietly through an attack by alien bullies and snapped her attacker's neck without standing up. The lesson was simple, and the galaxy learned it well. Never mistake human stillness for submission. Never mistake human quiet for weakness. Never forget that they come from a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. And never, ever give a human a reason to show you what they really are. Finished her studies at the Academy with perfect grades. No one bothered her again. When she walked through the halls, other students stepped aside. When she sat in the cafeteria, the tables around her remained empty. When she spoke in class, everyone listened. She did not enjoy the fear. She did not want to be alone. But she understood that this was the price of survival, and she had been paying that price her entire life. On Earth, the predators who survived were the ones who made examples of their attackers. They were the ones who showed, clearly and unmistakably, what happened to those who threatened them. Had learned this lesson early. She had learned that mercy was often seen as weakness, and weakness was an invitation to attack. She had learned that one decisive moment of violence could prevent a lifetime of smaller cruelties. She had learned how to end fights before they started. And now so had everyone else.